Do you have anything to say concerning Trump? Today, it seems like everyone does. Well, this is quite a divisive issue to say the least, so before we go any further, let's momentarily disengage our belief system or political views. The election of Donald Trump is not a standalone issue and is indicative of something else entirely, as are many of what became the controversies surrounding him. Controversies I'll give my take on, like the wall, transgenders in the military, and time travel. Trump isn't without a set of mysteries. We'll get to that later. He presented himself as a strongman when America felt they needed a strongman. At a time where trust in the government has been considerably low, for many, he really seemed like a laudable option, especially given the skeletons in the Clinton closet. First, if you haven't lived consecutively in America for the past 20 years or come from a poor, perhaps less industrialized country, what I'm about to say might not make much sense to you. But regardless of your pie-in-the-sky ideals about America or whatever started from the bottom story you may have, there are some things to consider. From the outside looking in, it's easy to classify life in the United States as full of opportunity, and in a lot of ways, I sincerely agree. However, the American dream we're peer pressured to pursue, well, you have to be asleep to believe it today. This just isn't the same America the previous generations have grown accustomed to. The average American makes $4,000 less than they did not even a decade ago. The collective American IQ is on the decline, and American scholastic comparison to other like nations continue to pale in contrast. Wage growth in certain parts of the country has been stagnating while the unemployment numbers continue to fluctuate. Homelessness and hunger are on the rise in this nation, while increasingly more people are making earnings at or below the poverty line. We are literally on the precipice of a have and have not scenario. The middle class is becoming the working poor. I've heard the ranging arguments about why he was elected. For those who don't fall in line with the left-right paradigm, they would say we were subjected to choosing the lesser of two evils. For those who believe the system can prevail, they would say we just needed the right person in office. Time will tell just how less evil or just right Trump is, but if you think a Congress or president will fundamentally change the issues I just mentioned, you don't understand the problem. There's always been divide in the political world, but now more than ever, in terms of this generation, has that divide become more blatant, so in no way am I discounting some of history's more prolific changes in political economic tides. However, the Bible does tell us that the last days are going to be worse than any other period on earth and even gives us some hints as to how it comes about. I say this because, like under the Obama administration, we're going to see policies and regulation implemented under this next administration strategically aimed at incrementally establishing additional adjuncts of control within the context of the biblical narrative. I think the brick and mortar situation down at the border plays into that control, especially psychologically. We shouldn't be focusing on the barrier itself, because that's what it is. Its construction has a symbolic representation. We're slowly being influenced by the powers who think they are into an isolation mentality. You just have to wonder what else they can manage. Moving on from the wall, Trump says he wants to keep transsexuals out of the forces. Okay, that's his prerogative, and hey, man, woman, or something in between, if you want to go to war for bankers and deliver democracy at the end of a gun barrel or tip of a tomahawk missile, that's your prerogative. Whether he really cares or not, due to the reverse psychology alone, we're going to see an effort to circumvent his decision. Be warned though, not everyone, especially in the ranks, has an accommodating attitude towards someone's gender dysphoria. I really think this is going to affect service members from the inside out, causing division and instability. There is a reversal of roles happening where women are becoming more masculine and men are becoming feminized. Remember when our service members dressed up in high heels? What picture does this paint to other nations' armed forces? Now, there are those who think Trump is anti-establishment. I don't share that sentiment. Ultimately, I think Trump is going to do what each of his predecessors have been conscripted to do, and that is to play a role while the real power pyramid players operate in the background. Arguably, there's a distinction between the United States and the United States of America. One is a corporation, while the other is a country. Considering this anecdote, I don't believe it's any coincidence a billionaire business professional made it into the Oval Office. Do you believe in coincidence? I'm going to change gears here and briefly elaborate on the mysteries of Trump I touched on in the beginning. After Inauguration Day, as Trump accepted his new role, he was 70 years old, 70 months, and 7 days, causing a stir for those who followed numerology. Before we called Donald Trump our president and Mike Pence our vice president, the distinct honors were Barack Obama and Joe Biden, making their campaign tag or logo Obama Biden. However, when you put Trump together with Pence, you get something interesting. Just say it to yourself out loud for a moment. Trump, Pence. Kinda sounds like trumpets, right? I know, grasping at straws, but if you've seen some of my previous videos, then by now you probably know I like to use scripture to help illustrate some of my points. With that in mind, scripturally speaking, trumpets are typically accompanied by a message, celebration, or warning, so I wonder which this is. Now, if you haven't heard the hubbub surrounding this next topic, you're likely going to. It essentially stems from a series of books authored by a novelist, Ingersoll Lockwood, published over 100 years ago in the late 1800s. The books are entitled The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, and the final novel from 1896, The Last President, who features a character by the name of Pence. I'll leave links to the article, but I figured I'd go over the meat and potatoes with you. As I read, keep in mind Russian collusion, Trump Tower, and the lavish lifestyle of the Trumps. There are some incredible connections to be made to the first family of the United States in Lockwood's novel from the turn of the 19th century. For starter, the main character's name is the same as President Donald Trump's son, albeit spelled differently. Trump's adventures begin in Russia and are guided thanks to directions provided by the master of all masters, a man named Don. Before leaving for his voyage to the unknown, Trump is told of his family's motto: the pathway to glory is strewn with pitfalls and dangers. Illustration from the novel depicts Trump dressed in lavish, old-fashioned clothing and jewelry as he departs from Castle Trump and begins his voyage, heading to Russia to locate an entrance into an alternate dimension. But by Lockwood's third novel, The Last President, things become even more eerily linked to the present day. The story begins with a scene from a panicked New York City in early November describing a state of uproar after the election of an enormously opposed outsider candidate. The article goes on to say the Fifth Avenue Hotel will be the first to feel the fury of the mob. The novel continues, citing an address in New York City where Trump Tower now stands. Like I said, coincidence, right? There's a Back to the Future connection as well. The character Biff, who not only went back in time, resulting in his becoming wealthy and powerful, was modeled after Trump, even bearing a slight resemblance to him. Just a coincidence the main character's name is Baron Trump, guided by the master of all masters, a man named Don. Interestingly enough, Trump's uncle, John George Trump, had ties to Nikola Tesla, a prolific inventor of many modern marvels of his day. Most know Tesla died and, upon his death, had his possessions seized by the government to ensure he wasn't developing anything that could undermine national security. Tesla's documents were looked over by, you've got it, John George Trump, who, of course, found nothing, right? Suspiciously enough, Trump gave the cryptic qualification stating that his uncle was an engineer who would tell him about the power of nuclear over 3 decades ago.
Nuclear is so powerful. My uncle explained that to me many, many years ago, the power, and that was 35 years ago. He would explain the power of what's going to happen, and he was right. Who would have thought?
Now this next bit comes from The Christian Who Cried Antichrist. As most of you know, Trump picked up a nickname in his early candidacy, the Donald. Looking into the etymology of that name, as I'm sure you know I like to do, it has a Scottish origin meaning world leader. This brought many to think President Trump was the Antichrist and, like the 1800 novel, used time travel to become rich and powerful. Daniel 7:25 at least once has been used to justify this claim. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. I've also heard this passage in reference to the Mandela effect, CERN, and time travel, as well as the changing of Sabbaths, feasts, and commandments. I take the position that there is more than one correct interpretation to the Bible, so I don't necessarily have a hardline view on time travel. I believe God exists outside of time, at least our construct of it, and we get small examples of this with the prophet's abilities to see into the future. Now, do I think our president is the Antichrist? The short answer is no, although Antichrist is a kind of title, so there's still a possibility he can be a type of Antichrist, but likely not the Antichrist on the biblical prophetic radar. Now, if you haven't heard or looked into the Illuminati card game, I seriously suggest you do. They were a series of cards first printed back in the early 1980s. They're akin to Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and others of the ilk. Well, not only did these cards, again printed in the 80s, seem to depict later natural disasters and national incidents, but also strikingly remarkable characterizations of relevant political figures and events. While there doesn't appear to be any identifiable order to the sequence in which the cards are dealt, I feel the shady dealers might be getting ready for a trump card. Regardless of your beliefs surrounding conspiracy, the Illuminati, or time travel, I'm open to the possibility that on some level there is an orchestrator to all this. That is to say, I don't rule out the possibility this was put here to throw us off. Thanks for spending some time with me, and check back later.